our webinar, Exporting to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Singapore. Please put any questions that you may have into the chat and we will get those answered. And we will be recording this and it will be on the Maricopa SBDC website by end of day tomorrow. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Carol and Tom.
Thank you, Karen. And we'll go ahead and get started. If we can just go ahead to the next slide. So just give you a little overview of today. We're going to just do a quick little bit of information about the SBDC, and then we'll have our friends from the U.S. Commercial Services speak, followed by our other presenters today, and they'll be introduced shortly. We do have time for Q&A from 10:55 to 11:10, and then a short wrap-up. And as Karen indicated, please go ahead and put your questions. We're using chat today, so a pretty open flow of communications, and we'll all try to keep an eye on that and make sure those either get addressed in chat or asked of our presenters. So if we can go ahead to the next slide, I call this next slide the embarrassing slide, because that picture of me is way too big there, and I think I have more hair than I do today. That's okay. So I'm a business analyst with the Small Business Development Center. I'm also a CGBP, which means Certified Global Business Professional, and used to be a VP of International Trade. I've been fortunate enough to be to all 7 continents and helped entrepreneurs in a range of areas, including fortunate to work with the SBDC and with Carol on working with entrepreneurs interested in international trade, specifically export. Also work with our capital team. In fact, let me tell you a little bit more about the SBDC. If we can go to the next slide, please. So Maricopa SBDC is part of the Arizona network, and it's part of America's SBDC. We have currently 8 counselors in Maricopa County and 10 SBDC centers throughout Arizona. We also have some satellite offices around Maricopa County, with our primary office being at Gateway. You'll see our link there for Maricopa SBDC. It's how you can connect with us. We offer what we call counseling. So basically business counseling and coaching with no fee. So we are funded by the SBA to reach out and help small businesses. And one of those areas, as you see today, is export. We also offer a variety of training. So not only do we have, not only do we have the export training, we have training in a wide range of areas, from U.S. Patent and Trademark Office training to business planning, raising capital, and many, many more options for you. We also offer a variety of resources. Some of those resources include things like market research. If you want to get a specific, say, IBIS World Report or ask questions, we work with our partners in San Antonio, where the America's SBDC Research Network is, and can get a lot of information for you through that and a variety of other sources. So we encourage you, if you are in small business, if you're considering export, already exporting, and just want to look to grow, expand, and get that trusted advisor, we encourage you to reach out, and we'll talk about that at the end. Or if you just want some business help, whether you're a startup or a small business, been in business a while and running into some issues and looking for ways to grow, we would love to work with you. So with that, if we go to the next slide, I'll introduce our first speaker for today, and that is Colin Hudson. He's an international trade specialist located here in the Phoenix area, and he's going to be talking to us about the ASEAN market for this presentation. And we just got to say we're so appreciative, he and all our speakers being here, and the great partnership we've had with all of them. And if you've been attending, you'll know that U.S. Commercial Services has been able to join us for each of these. So with that, I will turn it over to Colin.
Thanks very much, Tom. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and looking forward to present to you this morning. As Tom mentioned, my name is Colin Hudson. I'm an international trade specialist in our Phoenix office. We cover here in Phoenix the northern part of Arizona. We also have an office in Tucson, which covers the southern part. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to cover briefly about the ASEAN market and what it consists of, what are the opportunities in that region, and then I'll finish up at the end of the presentation to give you more information on the U.S. Commercial Service for those that are not so familiar with who we are and what we do. So the ASEAN region then consists of 10 Asian countries. You can see them listed there. It consists of a total population of 600 million people, $3.66 trillion in terms of combined GDP, and it's the 5th largest economy globally. Basically, what it is an association of these countries that work together in terms of working together economically, and also, to discuss matters of security and working together as trading partners. So that's what the ASEAN region consists of. Next slide, please, Carol. So in terms of the ASEAN region and Arizona, we wanted to highlight what we do, what we've been doing, and what we do with the region today. You can see from the slide, the US exported more than $122 billion in goods and services to the ASEAN region. In terms of Arizona, we exported $2.7 billion to the region, ranking us 11th in the country. All 50 states have exported to the region in 2021 and each year, supporting more than 600,000 jobs. In terms of the destination, the ASEAN region is the 5th top destination, you can see, for food and agricultural exports as well. Next slide, please. So on the left, you'll see the top US exports to the ASEAN region: computers, oil and gas. I won't go through every single one. We just wanted to highlight the main industries that are exporting to the ASEAN region. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the top import industries from the ASEAN region as well. Next slide, please. So we really wanted to highlight Singapore today. Singapore, actually, I lived there for lived and worked there for 5 years, so I'm fairly familiar with Singapore. It's a very small place. It's only 281 square miles. It only has a population of 6 million people, which is not that large, of course, for a country. It's about 30 miles long by, east to west, and 17 miles north to south. So it really is not a very large place, but you can see it's the 11th largest US export market. And it's a very, very successful country in terms of exporting, primarily because of its location, also because of the government as well. They're very open to doing business, international business. There's a very low level of crime and corruption, and very highly educated as well, the people there. And also the majority of them, they speak English. You have the Malay people, the Indian and the Chinese people, and they all speak English, although Malay officially is the national language. Next slide, please. So the principal exports to Singapore, you can see on the left-hand side: oil and gas, computers, transportation, machinery, and chemicals. The main imports from Singapore, again, chemicals, goods to be re-exported, computers and electronics, processed food, and machinery. Next slide, please. So, I hope I'm not going too fast, but if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask me at the end. More information on the US Commercial Service and who we are. Next slide, please. The US Commercial Service is part of the US Department of Commerce. We're a federal agency, and we're here basically to help US companies export around the world. So to help you grow your business internationally. As the US government, we can open doors. We have a global network. We work with we have this office here. We're part of 100 offices in the United States, and we have about 80 offices around the world that are located in our embassies and consulates. So every day we're working with our colleagues in these other countries to help US companies enter those markets. And we are also results driven as well. So we are measured on our successes. So we're very excited, of course, when we can help a company enter a market or a region such as the ASEAN region, because that's our success as well, and that's how we're measured. Next slide, please. So the way we do this, the way we help, we offer a lot of services, and you can visit our website, trade.gov, which will give you more information on what we do. So in terms of, for example, if you're looking to export or import with the ASEAN region, we would reach out to our colleagues in those countries, and they will work together with you to help identify opportunities in those markets. Normally what we're doing is looking for distributors or customers or ways that we can help you sell into those markets. So we would introduce to you potential companies that will be wanting to partner with you, and so you can build that relationship and start trading. Otherwise, it's very difficult just to go online, of course, and just Google, you know, when you're looking for business in these countries. In the ASEAN region, as I mentioned earlier, we have our embassies and we have the offices that are all staffed with people that are locally employed. We also have US diplomats, but we have local staff that know the markets, understand the sectors, and can help you there. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share some successes with you. I wanted to really, so the first one, Spectra Spray, is out of New Jersey. We helped them find a distributor in Singapore. And so they're now exporting. That's one of the countries that we helped in to export is into Singapore. Source Global is a local company you may be familiar with. And again, we've been helping them around the world. And in fact, I was just with them a few months ago in Malaysia because they're looking to enter that market as well. And so these are some of the successes, just wanted to highlight some of the successes that we've had recently at the US Commercial Service. And last slide, please. So with that, I hope I didn't go too quick. I want to leave time for questions, so please fire away. Unless Carol, and Tom, we should keep those to the end.
I think if we have any immediate questions for your what you shared, that's fine. So if there are any questions out there, if you want to just throw them into chat, we can ask those. We'll give it a second. Not seeing anything.
It comes up on here.
Oh, and then yeah, the information, that the presentation itself will be posted on the SBDC website shortly after everything's complete, maybe tomorrow or next day. Karen can let us know that at the end. But you know, all I can say is personally, I've been able to work in the past with commercial services. They're a wonderful organization to bring a lot of value. So I encourage you to, check out their website and take a look at how they might help you, and certainly talk to Carol, myself, or if you have a different SBDC counselor, about them, and let them know that you're interested in getting more information with export. Carol and I are both part of the export team, and we'll also help you connect there. I do see one question that came up. It says, you saw that the electronics are a major import for Singapore. Is that what we consider older tech, or are they a nation that's advanced in regard to tech?
Well, they are very advanced. Singapore is one of the most advanced places in the world in terms of technology. And it's incredible, their infrastructure that they've built. So they're very advanced in terms of technology. So and the companies that are based there are primarily, I worked with when I was there, from the high-tech industry. They don't do a lot of other things like manufacturing garments and that sort of thing, which happens in neighboring countries. Singapore is more of a industry focused sector country. Okay.
Oh, and then can Arizona, I'm so sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, everyone. Can Arizona company deal with other small countries in the region? For example, Bangladesh, Nepal, India?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we're here, we wanted to talk about the ASEAN region, just to give you some ideas, because it is such a booming area at the moment, and we have a lot of companies that are successfully finding partners in that area. But we're in those other countries as well, Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and we cover all sectors as well, from healthcare to agribusiness, mining, cosmetics, consumer goods. So absolutely.
All right, great. We're actually getting a few questions now, so that's great. And Colin, again, I'm sorry. If you can answer this, then we'll make a comment on SBDC as well. Can you assist with importing products as well as components?
So our focus is to help US companies export, but we're happy to answer questions in terms of logistics or, we don't get involved too much working with foreign companies because obviously we are tasked with helping US companies on the export side. But if it's general trade questions, we're happy to assist.
And on, the SBDC is similar. We are federally funded. So our initiative is focused on export, but we do have some folks like Carol with expertise, just helping small businesses in general. And of course, we can also make referrals and help you connect in the market on that as well. So another one, and then we'll take probably two more and have to move on. Run a company that has 50 former military advisors. Are there opportunities within the market for consultancy work or process improvement? We specialize in cyber, healthcare, education, logistics, aviation maintenance, etc. It's a pretty specific question, Colin. Maybe we can give a general answer and get them connected with you as well.
So the quick answer is yes. So we cover all kinds of, we cover different sectors. My colleague with Fernando Jimenez here in the office would cover that. So he handles military, government, security, fire and safety, so he can assist. And we do help companies that are consultants and offer business services, and we introduce those to potential partners around the world.
Okay, and then we just have someone that noted that over 50% of the GDP in the region, highest in Singapore, was services. And of course, we can always help with services export as well. There's a very long one here about AI and technology, and they just said, how about IT services to ASEAN, to the market was the question.
Yes, we can help there as well.
Okay, perfect. And then we'll go ahead and move forward. Introduce our next speaker. So next, one of our regular community partners that joins us, we're thrilled to always have them, is the Exim Bank, Export-Import Bank of the United States. And with us today is Sandra Donzella, the Deputy Managing Director for the Western Regional Office. So Sandra, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom, to you and everyone at the SBDC for inviting me to be part of today's program. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm delighted to be here. And thank you to everyone who registered and called in this morning as well. As Tom mentioned, my name is Sandra Donzella, and I'm a member of the Western Regional Office of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, or EXIM is how we're better known. The Western Regional Office consists of 5 smaller satellite offices in the West region, in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Irvine, and San Diego, which is where I'm based. Unfortunately, we don't have a local presence in Arizona, but I am directly responsible for coverage of your beautiful state and do travel there periodically throughout the year. And my contact information will be at the end of my presentation, so you can reach out to me anytime. Now, you just heard Colin's great presentation about the very valuable resources that are available through the U.S. Commercial Service, how they can help you find international partners, buyers abroad. And also he underscored the importance of the Asian market, which has a population of more than 660 million people, and U.S. exports total more than 122 billion. So it's clear that exporting represents tremendous growth opportunities for businesses like yours. But another piece of the puzzle that's likely going to be very important and key to help you succeed and capture opportunities globally is also going to be financing. export financing in two fronts, making sure that you have the financial resources available to be able to fulfill export orders. And secondly, just as important would be making sure that you are open and willing to address the credit needs of your international customers, because sometimes that can make the difference between winning or losing a sale. So whether it's you that needs financing or your customers are looking for flexibility with the payment terms, they want credit, that's when XM can be a valuable resource to help you support your export growth. Next slide, please. Very quickly, to give you a quick overview of who we are a federal government agency headquartered in Washington, D.C., which is really where all of the credit decision takes place. But to be in closer proximity to the exporting community, we do have a network of regional offices throughout the country. And the mission of XM is very similar to the mission of the U.S. Commercial Service Collins Organization, which is to support U.S. jobs by facilitating the growth of U.S. exports. So U.S. jobs through exports is really what we are about. It's something that's really important to us. And I should clarify, just like Collins Organization, XM's focus is also on supporting exports. We do not offer resources to support imports into our country. So strictly export support. And you should know there's about maybe over, I think it's 116 export credit agencies all over the world supporting their own exporters. So in a way, you can think of XM as a resource to fill in the gap where you're competing with companies from other countries that are likely leveraging the programs offered by their own export credit agencies. We also are not a bank. We don't take deposit, and we really don't do much direct lending at all, because we're not here to compete with the private sector, the commercial banks. We supplement them and we minimize risk. And I'll explain momentarily what we do on that end. Next slide, please. No, go back one, please. Okay, here we go. So in terms of what do we do? How can we help support your export activity? Well, again, we offer financial solutions, and these are all risk mitigating programs that are designed to address three different needs that you may come across. For example, if you need financing to be able to purchase or manufacture the items that will be exported. So in other words, to fulfill export orders, or solution would be the Working Capital Loan Guarantee Program. And I'll get into that later on in my presentation. Excuse me. On the other hand, if you have customers abroad asking you for flexibility with the payment terms, they want you to ship the product and pay you maybe in 30 or 60 days. So essentially they're asking you for credit terms. Then our solution would be or export credit insurance or foreign account receivable insurance. I've highlighted the word insurance because it does represent XM's most demanded program. It's very popular because inevitably most businesses that are engaged in exporting will likely develop a need for it, even if it's just with one customer. And third, the other thing that XM Bank can provide, and this is limited to exporters of capital equipment, bigger ticket items like mining equipment, ag equipment, medical equipment, industrial machinery, etc. If you are selling especially to buyers located in developing countries or emerging markets, where access to medium-term financing can be more difficult to come by, then our solution would be a program where we can help a customer, a buyer, get access to a medium or long-term loan, meaning a multi-year loan, so that they can finance the purchase of equipment from you. Next slide, please. And we are very, we're here to support businesses of all sizes, small, medium, and large. But we're very proud of the strong support that we provide consistently year after year to small businesses who represent the majority of our customers. For example, last year, 88% of all the transactions we received, the applications, involved direct support for small businesses. And more than 50% of those applications were for requests that were under $500,000. And in terms of what we did for small business authorizations, when we say authorizations, that means an approval. It could be an approval of a loan guarantee or an insurance policy, or to a less extent, a direct loan. Direct loans, I won't even talk about that much here because we only will do them if no lender can be found, and it's usually for buyer financing, although there's one program we offer that we've been doing on a direct loan basis, and that will be at the end of my presentation. But the point being, authorizations mostly consist of approvals Ex-Im Bank provides in the form of either an insurance policy or a loan guarantee. Next slide, please. And we're open pretty much all over the world in more than 150 countries. In some countries, though, we are closed off cover due to political reasons like Iran, North Korea, etc. In other countries where we view the risk as too high, we also may be off cover. A good example would be Laos or Myanmar, where we are at this time, unfortunately, off cover. However, if the risk can be externalized, then Ex-Im Bank can entertain supporting a transaction. In terms of the activity we've done to the rest of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, you see that we're quite active with Singapore. These are the numbers for the last 3 years in terms of Ex-Im's authorizations. And overall, for the Asian countries, we did over $1 billion for the last 3 years. And how do you know what our position is in a given country? We do have a country limitation schedule. It's a listing of all the countries in the world, and it will tell you what our position is in a given country, and it's posted right on a homepage. And this is a document that gets updated periodically based on recommendations made by Ex-Im's economics team and information from the State Department. Next slide, please. So let's get into a little bit more about the insurance program. I mentioned it's very popular because most exporters likely will develop a need for it. So this is likely to come up when you're negotiating a sale and you have a buyer that it's not willing to provide payment with cash in advance. So if that's the situation, and that can come up quite often because buyers increasingly, especially after the pandemic and with issues with supply chain and the long transit time, sometimes can't, they don't want to, excuse me, they don't want to tie up their cash flow way in advance. They may be willing to give you a portion of that sale in advance, maybe 30, 50%, but on the balance, it's likely that they will ask you to meet them halfway and maybe, give them that level of flexibility on that balance. So if that's the case, then insurance will be your solution. And the main benefit is risk protection on your export invoices when you offer credit. We can cover 90 or 95% of the invoiced amount. And with the risk minimized, the goal of the program is to empower exporters like you to meet the credit needs of your customers. Because if you insist on prepayment, you will lose growth opportunities as buyers are looking for vendors that are willing to provide that flexibility. So you can use it as a powerful marketing tool and also as a financing tool. Most lenders will exclude from the borrowing base foreign accounts receivables. However, if they insure, then the risk is lower and it becomes a more attractive proposition for a bank. And the banking sector in general will finance foreign accounts receivables, however, generally only if they're insured. And we have a lot of information on our website, including a video that in very simple terms provides a very brief description of the program and how it works, and there's the link for it. Next slide, please. In terms of what we cover non-payment by the foreign buyer due to commercial or political reasons. So commercial losses would involve lack of cash flow, insolvency, bankruptcy, situations where the buyer is still in business but they're not paying. Maybe there's a downturn in their economy, maybe a devaluation in their local currency that results in non-payment. And then political risk cover would be the more obvious types of risks, such as civil unrest, riots, war, revolution, or any government action that would prevent the buyer from making payments, such as the imposition of foreign exchange restrictions, meaning even if the buyer has the intentions to pay, if they are unable to send dollars out of the country, then EXIM would pay. The one thing, however, we don't cover are disputes. We just don't have the resources to judge who's wrong or right in a dispute situation. Next slide, please. And in the interest of time, I'm gonna skip this slide. If you wanna learn more about the process and how it works, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to schedule a virtual meeting and go over this in greater detail. Next slide, please. To qualify, we look for businesses that have a little bit of a track record. We want to see a 3-year operating history that is sales producing. And also, because the mission of EXIM Bank is to support U.S. jobs, the product does need to be made here with more than 50% U.S. content. And we measure content at cost, the cost of the components, the parts, ingredients, materials, as well as labor. Usually U.S. labor will bring it up substantially. So you can have foreign components in it, but what we're looking for is that more than 50% of the total cost represents U.S. costs, inclusive of labor, but exclusive of markup. Also, you will need to be registered with DNB, Dun & Bradstreet, and to apply, you will need a Dun & Bradstreet number, and we can provide more guidance on that. And also a SAM.gov registration. SAM.gov is a government website, and once you register, a unique entity identifier number would be issued to your business. And we have resources to help you get all of this done. Next slide, please. In terms of financing for you, say you get a large order and you need working capital to be able to fulfill it, or maybe you're already an active exporter and you need financing to support your international sales growth, then our solution would be the Working Capital Loan Guarantee Program. Here, EXIM's role is that of a guarantor, providing a 90% guarantee of repayment on your loan. So with the risk minimized, the goal of this program is to encourage the banking sector to have more flexibility and be more aggressive in supporting the export financing needs of small and mid-sized businesses. So these loans are available through a network of more than 50 lenders nationwide that participate in this program and have the appetite to engage in export financing. And the loan can be structured either as a transaction-specific credit facility, meaning it will be a loan made available to you to support your financing needs related to the fulfillment, perhaps of one large international sales contract, or it could be a revolving line of credit that will go up and down as you use it and repay it, supporting ongoing export activity to multiple buyers. And the key benefits are the aggressive advance rates that you can borrow against based on the value of your assets. This is an asset-based loan structure, and lenders would advance to you up to 75% of the value of your export-related inventory and up to 90% on foreign accounts receivables. These are rather aggressive rates. If you compare this to a traditional asset-based loan, for example, work in process, which is part of inventory, is 0 advance rate. Whereas if you're working with a lender that is using our program, you could borrow up to 75%. At the end of the day, the main benefit is you can more than double your ability to borrow with our support. SBA also, by the way, offers this program. There's some differences, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to get into it, but I do like to mention that if you are a smaller business and maybe you have a borrowing requirement that's less than $500,000, usually we refer those to the Small Business Administration's Office of International Trade. They offer a program called the Export Express, which is very practical, and they have a list of lenders that utilize it. And eventually, as you grow, maybe you will be more ready for EXIM. And that's because the lenders that use our program, they set their own minimum borrowing requirements, often starting at more than $500,000, in some cases more than $1 million. And if you're an early stage business, there are community development financial institutions, and Tom and Carol at the SBDC can provide introductions. There's one I know that does business in Arizona. They're located where I'm based in San Diego, and it's the Community Development Corporation Small Business Finance. They can do loans for startup businesses up to $350,000. Next slide, please. And here you have my contact information. I'm sorry I rushed, and I know I give you a lot of material, but again, I'm available to help you overall. EXIM, we want to be we want to play a role in supporting your export activities, and I encourage you to reach out to me if you want to run a potential export transaction by me, and hopefully we can work together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. So I'll encourage everyone to go ahead and start placing your questions in chat, and we can capture those and come back. We are running about a minute past time, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next presenter. That was fantastic information. So next is Matthew Clark, the head of Trade Consulting Solutions with Kuehne Nagel. So Matthew, I will turn it over to you.
Okay.
All right.
My fellow colleague is Joy Siemens, and she'd like to start off with an introduction of our companies first.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. We appreciate being invited to speak today, and Matt has some great information to share. Just as an overview about Kuehne Nagel, if you haven't heard of us before, we are the world's leading logistics provider, and we have a truly global network. We are #1 in sea and air freight as a freight forwarder. We are located in 109 countries, including Singapore, as well as an office here locally in Phoenix. So we have about 1,300 offices globally. So whether it's import, export, customs brokerage, services, and of course, Matt, he heads up our trade consulting group. So if you have some questions about that, I'm sure that either Matt or my information will be provided. Go ahead and next slide. So Matt Clark, just to give a little background, he is our director of Kuehne Nagel's Trade Consulting Group. He's based in our Los Angeles office. And Matt has over 25 years in customs and trade compliance. He's a really great resource. His expertise includes import compliance as well as export and customs regulations. He regularly works with U.S. Customs to obtain duty refunds for our customers and rulings for classifications, valuation, and country of origin on the import side. He's a licensed customs broker since 1997 and is also a licensed attorney. Matt serves on the board of the Chicago Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association, and he's active nationally with the National Customs Brokers and Forwarders Association. So again, Matt's a wonderful resource, and I will turn this over to you now.
Okay, next slide. Very good. Thank you very much, Joy. So we have a lot of information to cover real quick, and I'll do the best I can to push this and compress this into the time allotted. Remembering that we're talking about generalities here, the specifics and details would be really hard to cover in such a short amount of time, and I'm going to speak really, really fast. So our first concept, of course, is that now that you've decided that you want to engage with ASEAN countries, and presumably you have buyers there, you need to think about exporting from the United States. And remember that we are a private company, and so we deal in this space all the time. But the very first thing you're going to need to consider is logistics. Okay, choosing the right transportation provider is essential. You want to consider factors like reliability, cost effectiveness, and transit time. Different carriers may offer specialized services depending on the type of goods you're exporting. So you really want to align with one that matches your needs, and that's really important. Another thing to consider is export controls. Now, increasingly, the U.S. government is more and more interested in controlling and governing exported goods. There are considerations like embargoes, where you're restricted from exporting to a certain country, or certain persons, sanctions and things like that. These are political trade restrictions that are put in place against targeted countries or individuals. And as a business, you need to be aware that these exist. Now, many of the things that I'm cautioning about, I don't mean to discourage in any way. Many of these activities can be automated. And for example, if you were to approach a forwarder like my company and say, I want to export to a country that is not allowed to be exported to, it wouldn't even go through our system. But it's important to consider these things when you go negotiating with certain countries and certain individuals. There's the denied party and restricted party screening, which is basically a review of the details of who you're sending your goods to. Again, it's automated. It's a necessary step, but this is another thing to consider. There's the harmonized tariff schedule number. So internationally, countries have used a similar program for a nomenclature for identifying and classifying certain products. And that classification number helps determine the duty rate in the country of import, okay? But it also is important for our export data that the government collects. So these are other considerations. And then, of course, there's classification under the ECCN, which is another classification system that determines certain controls over certain exports. So if you're unsure about your ECCN, you can always request a formal classification from the Bureau of Industry and Security, which is an agency under the Commerce Department, or you can consult with an export professional, such as a Kunanago or somebody like that. Then there are product-specific export controls, and so all of these things that need to be considered. Finally, there's licenses, and licenses pretty much come into two groups. One is issued by the Department of Commerce, and the other is issued by the Department of State, which is the Department of Defense. So depending on the product, you need to be aware that these kinds of controls exist. And if you could, and then finally under this is documentation required. And again, many of these elements are kind of already automated and controlled, meaning you wouldn't really be able to export unless you provide a commercial invoice. And that's the bill of goods for the goods shipped. And it contains important information like the buyer, the seller, the terms of sale, and the detailed list of goods. An export declaration through customs is required in almost all cases. And again, your transportation provider can handle this. A certificate of origin is required in some cases when, on the other end, the company that's importing wants to take advantage of a duty-free treatment under a preferential free trade agreement between the two countries. And so the certificate of origin would be required, and who issues that is typically the manufacturer or the exporter, the supplier on this side. And a bill of lading, of course, this is a transportation document between the exporter and the carrier. So lots of things to consider, and I'm not trying to discourage by overly complicating things, but many cases in many of these elements are automated or easily explained and provided for by your transportation provider. If you could go to the next slide, please. Incoterms, real briefly, Incoterms is a set of terms that are used as a shorthand for different types of shipping arrangements. What they do is they define the roles and responsibilities in international transactions. They're set up by the International Chamber of Commerce, and their primary function is to clarify roles and responsibilities for both the seller and the buyer and the international transportation provider. It ensures that both parties are aware of their obligations regarding the shipping and delivery of goods. So again, negotiating with a buyer and getting your goods sold is one element. It's the main point. And getting financing, as one of my other panelists mentioned, but that transportation component is really important, and Incoterms are a way of securing the roles and responsibilities of each party so that nobody gets injured in the transportation arena. It also provides guidance to the transportation provider, because we as a carrier, we look at the Incoterms and it tells us who we're invoicing for, right? And really key here is that Incoterms define the responsibilities and at the transfer of risk. So one of the most important aspects of Incoterms is how they dictate the transfer of risk from the seller to the buyer. Each Incoterm specifies a point in the shipment process between, Los Angeles and Singapore, as an example, where that transfer occurs. So if you take the FOB as an example, the seller's responsibility and their risk ends when the goods are loaded on the vessel at the port of Los Angeles, right? And so from that point forward, the buyer's risk, it's their responsibility from this point forward. They bear the costs, and if something happens to the goods, they also bear the risk of loss. So it's important for traders to understand these points. And then finally, protection for the product, right? Whether you're the seller or the buyer, you want to ensure the safety and integrity of the product. That should be your priority. So under certain terms, as we mentioned before, the transfer of risk goes from one party to the other. If you are in control during this segment of the transportation move, you want to ensure that the product is insured, right? That would be paramount, because things happen in cargo movements. Trucks crash, ships sink, or they lose containers. Things happen, and so it's a risky move anyways. So you want to make sure that you're covered, and that's what Incoterms do. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So navigating the regulatory environment, it's important to understand that that the U.S. is increasingly controlling more export products. It used to be in the old days that the U.S. government was really concerned with imports because that generated revenue. But in the world of national security concerns, more and more the government is, through various agencies, is more concerned with exports as well. The United States is a major player in international trade and exhibiting tighter controls over these products. It's influenced by a number of factors, ranging from national security to protecting the domestic industries. That's another concern of the U.S. government. So these controls are put into place. You need to be aware of them, and I mentioned it before in another slide. Also, you want to make sure that you know your customers. So in an era of big data and minute detail that shipments would entail, visibility through the supply chain is really important, especially towards end users, because some of the controls that the US government puts in place are, it's not necessarily who you're shipping to. Hey, that's a good party, right? But what if they, in turn, ship to an end user that's restricted? So you want to have visibility to your supply chain. That's important. There's a ripple effect in international politics as well. Consider the recent situation in Ukraine. About a year ago, there was a war started in Ukraine. Such a large-scale political disruption can dramatically influence trade routes, sanctions, and overall export and import dynamics. So you need to be aware of these situations, be up to date on certain political developments. And then finally, diversion and export enforcement. This is what we were talking about earlier, is that diversion is where exported goods are transferred from their intended destination to unauthorized users or destinations. And there's a rising concern, and the U.S., among other nations, has been strengthening its export enforcement mechanisms to counter this. These are all considerations that you need to be aware of, up to date on. It's not that you have to, watch every political move and every new news article that goes out, but it's important to be up to date. If you could pass change to the next slide. So talking about Singapore import requirements, as my fellow panelist Colin mentioned, Singapore is a very sophisticated and mature country for importing and exporting. They're right in the middle of this area, and they're really highly developed infrastructure. There is imported goods are subject to GST and or duty payment. So all import goods entering into Singapore are subject to the GST, which is at 8% and scheduled to increase to 9% in 2024. There's a necessity for a customs permit. So no goods can pass through Singapore's borders without a customs permit. And again, it's a fairly well-structured system. Typically, importers on the other side would enlist the help of a customs broker or a customs agent. Much of this is electronic and automated in many cases. But you just need to be aware of that structure and the challenges that your importer, your buyer, faces, because they may turn to you and ask for assistance with information and documents. Singapore has a preliminary advice program for strategic goods, so that an importer on that side can go to the government and customs and ask them for advice on whether goods can be imported and whether they can be, under what conditions they can be imported. And finally, the US and Singapore have a free trade agreement. So goods coming into the United States from Singapore, if they qualify, can be imported duty-free. The reverse is also in place. It's not just about tariff reductions, but it's also about facilitating smoother trade operations between the two countries. And so how would that affect you? Well, it could have come into play with affecting your negotiations for price. It also may require that you provide a certificate of origin or details on the manufacturing assembly process by which your goods were made in order to qualify those goods on the other side. So importing goods into Singapore is much more than just shipping and receiving. It's about understanding and adhering to this well-structured framework, and taking into consideration GST payments and duties and the effects it has on your importer on the other side. If you could change to the next slide. So I put together a slide for best practices, and The first one, of course, is to obtain the services of a trusted transportation provider. One of the fundamental elements of successful exporting is partnering with a trusted transportation provider. It's just not about moving goods. It's about compliance with the laws and the regulations throughout the world. And so this is your first step. Stay updated on regulations. This is a region, we're talking about a region of 10 countries. So each has its own set of regulations and standards. As an exporter, it's imperative to remain updated on the rules and how they impact both your exports and your buyers' imports. You should have real clear communications and SOPs with your service providers, with your buyers, with all the parties that are involved here, so that that the process doesn't that goes smoothly without a hiccup, and what to do in case of some sort of mishap. Keep up to date on the export regulations. We talked about that a couple times. Understanding your selling terms and your Incoterms. Incoterms can be incorporated into your contracts. Take a collaborative review of import requirements with your buyer. So, get into discussion with them. What are they going to need? Is that part of, your sell to them for their services? And finally, to include export trade controlled languages in your contracts so that both parties are aware and it is well established what is going to be done by whom, and so that there are, you reduce the risk of any potential disputes. And I think that's the last slide. And I know I spoke fast. Happy to answer any questions I can.
Okay, we'll leave, and thank you, Matthew and Joy. We'll leave this slide of resources up for the time being. We've got about 10 or 12 minutes for some questions, and we have a few that were posted. But if you have questions from Matthew, Sandra, Colin, or the SBDC, please place them in chat. So Matthew, actually the first one's for Colin. Colin, our person who asked a question earlier about military is interested in, his name's Kevin, and is interested in, meeting your colleague that might be doing work in the security cooperation consultancy space. And Colin, if you can go ahead and join us. I'm wondering, I don't know if that's specific right now, but perhaps you can take just 30 seconds to explain how is commercial services structured here in Arizona?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Tom. So we're structured here by sector. So I work with my colleagues here. We're each aligned to different sectors. So I have, for example, healthcare, agribusiness, and consumer goods, and so on. And then someone else handles education and environmental technology companies. Fernando Jimenez, my other colleague, he handles security, military, fire and security sectors. So he would be your contact, Kevin, for what you're looking for. His email is fernando.jimenez@trade.gov.
And certainly Fernando is actually one of our presenters when we, as part of the series, did exporting to Mexico. And so Kevin, if you're an SBDC client, you can chat with your counselor about that, get that information. We'll also be sending it out. So I think the next question, Carol, is for you. And that's, can SBDC assist companies in Arizona in identifying both import and export items specific to the ASEAN region? We heard of some of that today, but Carol?
Yes, I can help you to run a report that actually at census.gov, you are able to pull out import and export data. So if you don't know how to do that, you can reach out back to me after this webinar. I can help you to run a report. You will see bigger data. It's not that detailed, but it's good enough for you to understand the numbers. Perfect.
And there's also a follow-up question on who wants to tackle this. Is Arizona a port of entry, or did it change? I don't think it's quite as simple as a yes or no, but Carol, you want to take that?
Yes, it is a port of entry. You can ship to Arizona, then report do the customer clearance here.
Okay.
Well,
I'm trying to see if,
yeah.
Go ahead.
It really depends where is the destination on your bill of loading. when people send it to you. If they say that the bill of lading, the destination is Arizona, you can do the customs clearance in Arizona. Then you can see it's at the port of entry.
Perfect. Thank you, Carol. And Karen from the SBDC team has placed a link to request counseling. Are there other questions for any of our speakers out there at the moment?
Okay.
Carol, turn it over to you.
Okay, so here are some tips we want to share with you today. So if you are a new exporter and then you are not so familiar with the export regulations, so the suggestions for you, the first one is do not assume any destination regulations, because you know America very well, but it doesn't mean other countries function the same way. So do not use your own knowledge to think others. There's no logic behind it. And the second thing is, I want you to know that if you don't know the regulation, which is totally fine, nobody knows from the beginning, please work closely together with the buyers, and the buyers freight forwarder. They know the destination better than you are. They can give you better tips to start with. And then after you found the regulations which you feel comfortable to start, and then you can start with a small trial order to risk less money, to start the business, to see how it goes before you place a bigger order. So I think this is a place applies to all the small business who want to start the business, export business, not only to Southeast Asian countries, it's also applied to other destinations as well. These are tips we think can help you to start. And the next thing I want to talk to you about the SBDC counseling experiences. So if you want to talk to us, please go to our website and fill out a request counseling form. And then our coworker Karen will take your request and send it to one of the lead counselors. If you need me and Tom's assistant for export, please put our name at the end of the note that say Carol or Tom, and then Karen will send you guys to ours. So this is a little bit about myself. And I had so far about 16 years experience about doing international trade. Please feel free to contact me after this webinar if you have any questions about our company and how we do the counseling. And this is Tom's and my email address. You can write down and send us emails anytime. I think that's it. And Tom, you want to come back to the questions?
Sure. I didn't see any more questions posted. So I think we've answered all the open questions at the moment. We want to just definitely thank all of our esteemed speakers that joined us today, giving us their time. We truly appreciate it. These are, folks, incredible resources. And I'd like to say that, yeah, I'd like to pretend you can only access them through SBDC, but you can access them directly. But we would love to have you join us at the SBDC as a client if you're not already, so we can give you any sort of help and assistance possible. So thank you everyone for joining us. This is our final Exporting 2 series event this year. And then stay tuned. We've got a new series that's going to kick off in 2024 of additional exporting events. And we'll look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a wonderful holiday season. And thank you everyone for joining us. And please do remember to complete the evaluation at the end of the program.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys. It was